Hello and welcome to Broads and Books. I'm Erin.
And I'm Amy, and this is a special Broads and Books bonus episode.
Today on the Broads Talk Books with, we've got Carter Sickels, author of The Prettiest Star.
I recommended his book in episode 69, where we talked about the American dream.
I do believe this is also where you admitted that you were wandering around your house and crying after finishing it.
That is a fact, and because this book gave me that reaction and it involved David Bowie as well, I immediately had to get on the interwebs and contact Carter and see if we could talk to him, and he agreed.
He agreed, and I love that you channeled your emotion into something productive. You're like, all right, no, we're going to do this.
We're going to do this.
Yes.
We're going to bring this together.
And we got him on Zoom, and he told us about his favorite book growing up, some touching fan interactions, and who he kind of stalked into being his friend.
Which we deeply respect. He also made a terrible mistake and opened the door to me talking about my obsessions.
I thought I was going to have to intervene.
Yeah.
You pulled it back pretty quick. I was impressed.
I tried.
Yeah.
We've put all the books that Carter mentions in the show notes so you can add them all to your TBR pile.
And now, here's our interview with Carter Sickels.
What do you think, thinking of yourself as an early reader, as a kid or a teen, did you have a favorite book back then, and why was that your favorite?
Well, I mean, like most writers, I was a really big reader. I started as a reader and spent a lot of time at the library every week or every couple of weeks. My mom would take me and I'd come back with a big stack of books. And like occasionally we'd go to a bookstore, which was very thrilling and exciting. I'd get to actually buy a book. But I think as a kid, I was reading a lot of like books about animals, a lot of Beverly Cleary. But I think my most influential book was probably around 5th or 6th grade, which was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
Oh, yeah.
And I've written about this, my obsession with this book, because I read it over and over, and I watched the movie over and over. And I think it was something about these like deep bonds that these boys had with each other that sort of spoke to me in ways that I didn't really understand, and I couldn't talk about with gender and masculinity and tenderness. And it's actually like, it feels like a very queer book because it's just all these boys, and they're sort of this gang of boys from the wrong side of the tracks who all love each other in different ways, And then I read all of S.E. Hinton's books, Rumblefish, Tex. And yeah, I think it was like this thing of like, I had a crush on all these boys, but I also wanted to be these boys. And also, in The Outsiders, the protagonist, of course, is a writer. So I think that spoke to me. So yeah, that was one very influential book. And then, in high school, I read a lot of Stephen King and a lot of like really trashy books in high school, like V.C. Andrews. And then I was also reading, I think I was reading some, sort of more classics that I would, be reading in my lit classes and English classes. But at some point, I think it was more high school where I got really, I think I did a paper on it, and I got really obsessed with banned books. And so I had had a list of banned books. So then I would read books on that list. So I had this I had all the trash I was reading, and then I was reading Catcher in the Rye and the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I think that was my form of rebellion, reading banned books.
Yes. And then searching the trash for smut.
Exactly.
Get out.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things that we've talked about and that listeners have talked about is classics that they struggled with. Like maybe a classic was pushed on them early on. And one that we talked about was Moby Dick that we both struggled with. Do you remember a classic that maybe you struggled with, or, you thought this isn't what I want to be reading?
I mean, I love Moby Dick, but I will say, but I didn't read it in high school.
We can still be friends. It's okay.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah. I didn't read it in high school or college, and I was always sort of like, that's never a book I want to read. But then at some point, I was in my 30s, and I was on this writing residency, and so I just had a ton of time to sink into a big book like that. And I loved it. I mean, it's much funnier than I was expecting, and weird, and Yeah, I still recommend it, but you could try again maybe one day.
Aaron, I guess we have to try again now.
I don't.
But you do have to be in the right place.
That's true. Yeah, probably a more receptive place than Aaron is right now.
Yeah, sorry. I'll take your word for it. Sounds great.
Yeah, it's okay. There's only so much time, right, that we have to read all
Right.
these books. I mean, I don't have like a particular experience where I had a bad reading experience, but I mean, I just have so many gaps. I think we all do, but they're
Yeah.
just, I haven't read any Dickens. I think I read like A Tale of Two Cities in high school, but I haven't read anything since. Like, I haven't read a ton of Austen. Like Henry James, I feel sort of embarrassed I haven't read Henry James. Like, I've read a couple of books, but you know, he's sort of a writer that a lot of literary writers name. So yeah, I think I have, you know, many gaps.
Well, don't worry. I think that's way more widespread. And even in just talking to other authors like you, they've revealed that, you know, they feel sort of guilty about not reading everything in the canon, but
there's so much to read.
Yeah. What, you know, as you were reading when you were younger or maybe in college or after, were there particular books that you think made you want to be a writer or you saw a path to writing?
Well, I mean, I think when I was a kid, I was reading a lot, but I was also writing a lot. And I always wanted to be a writer, but I had no idea how one did that. Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was just writing these sort of, I mean, it's basically just plagiarizing what I was reading, I think. So I was reading writing lots of stories about dogs, animals, and I wrote some stories that were sort of like The Outsiders ripoffs as well. And then in college, I took a creative writing class. Well, I took just like a freshman comp class, and my teacher was like getting him his MFA. He was like a TA. And so I had no idea you could like study creative writing.
Yeah.
And so he kind of connected me into that world. And so I had my first creative writing teacher in undergrad kind of let me sit in with her grad students. It was very exciting. And she was like a very sort of serious, like very literary fiction, very serious fiction. And I think that's when I started to shift away completely from like Stephen King and all the stuff I was reading in high school. And I was reading like Eudora Welty and this person who's not, I don't think he's really read anymore, is James Purdy. And his stuff was really dark, and he was queer and just dark and weird. Milan Kundera, like Garcia Marquez, like a lot of that stuff. And so I think, you know, that I guess gave me a way to, not that I felt like I could become those kind of writers, but that I could study writing and really focus in on craft and learn more about like the techniques and skills. And I mean, I think like one book, I mean, I'd already got my MFA, but one book that I still love is Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim.
Yeah.
You ever read that? It's such a great book. And I read it when I was living in New York. And so it was like the 90s when I read it, or mid 90s. And it was just so queer, but about the small town. And I think I knew like that really interested me, that I wanted to be a writer who was writing about queer themes and queer issues, but not necessarily in urban spaces. And that was one of the first books I read that kind of did that.
Wow. Yeah.
Rural and queer.
What a great experience to be able to sit in with your TA and just see that other world and see a little bit of that other world. Yeah.
Right. It was, I mean, I think because I was so young, I wasn't intimidated in the way that I probably would be now. Like, okay. But yeah, it was a really fantastic kind of transformative experience.
Well, shifting a little bit to your reading habits now, how many books are on your TBR pile, and what are a few that you can share?
I have a huge TBR pile.
Good.
And let me see here. Okay. Well, there's a brand new book by Vanessa Veselka, The Great Offshore Grounds, that I'm super psyched about. I love big novels that
Yeah.
cover a lot of time, and this one follows these two sisters, and I think it's just looks like a big ambitious book. One that I actually think you just recommended, it's been on my list and I have it sitting over here, is Luster.
Oh, yeah.
I'm super psyched to read that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, there's another debut, How Much of These Hills is Gold by
Oh,
C.P.M.
yeah.
Zhang,
Uh-huh.
been on the list. And then there's a book of essays I want to read called Tomboyland by
Ooh.
Melissa Ballavino. So those are a few.
Yeah.
There's a lot of others. There's like stuff that's been sitting there for, years.
Yeah.
And it's not like I don't want to read those particular books. It's just about time and what's drawing my attention. And
Mm-hmm. Do you, thinking of books that you have been reading lately, has there been a book or a couple books that have really surprised you recently?
Yeah, for sure. There's a book by Leah Hampton, a collection of short stories with a fantastic title, which is Fuckface.
That's a great title.
Yeah, and there's a little asterisk for the U, but they're really funny and surprising, and they're set in Appalachia. They're very contemporary, and a lot of them are dealing with like climate change issues and just like social political issues, but they're very character driven, funny stories. We Had No Rules, another collection of short stories by Corinne Manning about queer experiences, queer lives, that I really loved. I have to shout out to my friend Cooper Lee Bombardier, who has a book of essays, Pass with Care, about his experiences as a trans man in San Francisco and in New Mexico in the 90s and early 2000s. That's fantastic. Pretty recently, I read Paula Sicky's memoir, Later, which is just beautiful, gorgeous, devastating, about the AIDS epidemic in Provincetown and kind of living through that period.
It sounds like you read pretty widely over different genres, short story collections, essay collections, memoir. Do you find yourself attracted to a certain kind, or is it just kind of whatever you're feeling at the moment?
Yeah, I kind of move back and forth. Like right now, I've been reading more short stories just because I feel super busy with school and I haven't had time to really sink into a novel. But I mean, yeah, my first love are novels. And like I said, those big kind of character-driven, ambitious novels. Britt Bennett's The Vanishing Half. Absolutely loved that.
Aaron
That was probably
about that one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one gets me.
So good.
It was. Oh, man.
Last big novel I read. That was so great. Ooh, another one I read kind of the beginning of the pandemic is called Leading Men by Christopher Castellani. And I think it was out last year or the year before. And it's this like reimagining of Tennessee Williams' relationship with his partner, Frank Merlo.
Oh, wow.
And it's really gorgeous. And it takes, like, part of the novel takes place in Italy. Part of it takes place in Provincetown. And that, especially at the beginning of it, at the pandemic, it was just such a, like, just transported me to these places, outside of the US and outside of my house.
Yes.
Yeah, so I recommend that for sure.
How would you say you normally find your book recommendations?
I think just from other writers, following people or things that come up on Instagram, on Twitter for sure. And then, I look and see what the independent bookstores are recommending. I try to stay on top of, what's being reviewed and in the New York Times and New Yorker. But yeah, a lot of it is just kind of word of mouth too.
Well, I find that Aaron and I are getting a lot of that as we're talking to more authors. And that's, in fact, how I heard about your book. We talked to Andrea Lawler, and they recommended The Prettiest Star. And so that shot to the top of the list.
That's so great.
And, as you heard this week, we recommended it in our episode for The American Dream.
Yeah,
thank you. And I am an enormous David Bowie fan. So the combination of plus the subject matter, the Starman section, just I was bad. But any particular books or authors do you think that inspired the Prettiest Star in particular?
I mean, it's like I grew up in the 80s, so I was taking some from like mining my own memories, but then of course I did a lot of research about the AIDS epidemic, especially trying to find information on small towns. And so there was a lot of nonfiction that I was turning to. It's called My Own Country, which is this guy, Abraham Verghese, and he wrote about his time in like East Tennessee and very rural America in the, I think it was like 86 or 87. And he was a doctor. And so infectious disease doctor. And so he writes about the AIDS epidemic at that time. So that was one that I looked at. And then as far as fiction, I wasn't reading a lot of it as I was working on the novel, but for sure, Michael Cunningham's work informed me as a writer, and it informed how I was thinking about this book. Sarah Schulman, who's like AIDS historian, a lot of her work and her fiction was also just doing a lot of like reading and watching documentaries. And there's a lot of fantastic documentaries. There's one called We Were Here about San Francisco in the 80s and 90s. It's just beautiful and devastating about the epidemic. And that one in particular, I mean, for some reason just hit me about how young so many people were. I mean, it was just like, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. So it's a beautiful documentary.
Well, there's a set of questions we like to ask at the end that are somewhat book related and some not.
Okay.
The first one is, we would like to know, what is your most memorable fan interaction? Whether that's fun, weird, touching, creepy.
In person, virtual, the world is crazy now, so it could be anything.
I mean, it's weird because, I haven't been out, like with my first novel, The Evening Hour, I was touring a little bit, and, that came out in 2012, so, which seems so long ago. So I'm trying to think back to that period.
We were so young and innocent then.
Right? Yeah. It was a different time. And so this time I've been, it's just me in front of my computer screen. But I've been getting, like, since the book is getting into people's hands, I'm starting to hear back from readers. I've had a couple of really powerful kind of interactions with people. One person who lived through, who's a gay man who lived through the epidemic and grew up in a small town, and then was living in Atlanta during the time, and just sort of felt that I captured the time period in this way that felt very authentic and real and important to him. So hearing back from some of those people, or I heard back from someone who just remembered the intensity of like accepted homophobia in the 80s and 90s. And like one of her best friends was gay in high school, and just like what he had to sort of endure, So I think like those fan interactions have been just really powerful, and, nothing weird at all, just people trying to connect and about their experiences that they had from that time.
It must be very validating, especially after doing so much research and trying to mine your own experiences as well.
Yeah, it has been. And it's like, it's been really great to reach those readers, but then there's like the really young readers that I feel like I've been connecting with too. And that is like powerful in other ways, just because so many of them were really just not taught anything about the AIDS epidemic, and knew nothing about really this history. So it's been great to hear back from them.
Yeah.
As well.
And that made me think of the high school experiences you talk about in the book, and just the rampant use of language. It was very familiar. It reminded me of all of that stuff. Yeah. In either your experiences promoting this book or with your previous book, was there a particular author you were really excited to meet and you got to meet, and it was a good experience?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I mean, I think Lydia Yuknovich, whose work was also really inspirational inspirational to me. And even though I was already writing, I already had a book published, like her book, Chronology of Water, just affected me in this way. It was just such a different kind of look or like way of writing about your personal story, and the way she sort of pushes at the edges of things and writes about trauma and queerness and bodies. I just loved. So I got to meet her when I was living out in Portland, and I think she was at like a book signing. And so, I mean, Portland is great because there's so many writers out there, but it's also sort of accessible. Like you can meet people in a way that you can't in New York in the same way, you know? And so I had her sign my book, and she was, of course, amazing and lovely. And then, I don't know, I felt like I would just go to whenever she had a reading or something, I would like be there. And then eventually, like our circles converged a little bit, and like we were actually guest teaching together at Eastern Oregon at their low residency program. So that was really cool to become a little bit closer to her, you know, after just admiring her as like, sort of feeling starstruck.
And I like that strategy of forced friendship, just
right,
following her around.
just stalk the writer that you want to become friends with.
We will take that to heart.
Just keep showing up.
Right, exactly. Well, eventually she'll remember. They'll remember who you are.
Hopefully not with alarm. And
right, right, exactly.
How would you say your readings changed since you became a published author?
Ooh, that's a good question too. I think that I'm just reading so much more sort of contemporary stuff, and like reading, you know, people who it's their debuts, or reading like my friends' work or friends of friends, you know. I think there's just a lot more of like very contemporary work that I'm reading. I'm also trying to read, you know, I think my background and sort of the work that I was taught in even my MFA program was a lot of like realism and modernism, and I didn't, except for high school when I was reading horror, I didn't really branch outside of that. So like now I, you know, try to read across genres. So like Carmen Maria Machado's work, you know, I think is really fascinating. So especially like people who are kind of blurring the genres.
Yeah, I imagine, especially since you've gone through the process of knowing how to, you know, get a work out there, seeing genres blurred, probably you appreciate that even more.
Yeah.
Do you have a book that you think everyone should read?
Well, I mean, I said Moby Dick.
Damn it.
Come on.
We are going to fail, Aaron. Sucks.
Can you fail if you don't even try? Because I'm not.
I mean, one book is so hard, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I do kind of feel like if I had to pick one, like sort of great American novel, aside from Moby Dick, I mean, I think Toni Morrison, right? Beloved to me is just kind of the one. And I feel like, especially now, like every American should read that book because it's speaking to, you know, the institutionalized racism and slavery and just like inherited trauma. And it just is like a book that we all need to read again and again.
Well, we always talk about at the end of the episodes, we talk about our favorite pop culture thing that we're obsessed with right now. What's your current pop culture obsession?
I would say it's probably with TV, because I do watch a lot of TV, and I just finished I May Destroy You.
Ooh, that's next on my list.
Oh God, it's so brilliant. Yeah, you have to watch it.
Okay.
Michaela Cole. And I loved it. And so I can't stop thinking about it, and I want to rewatch it, even though it's a very sort of intense show. It's not something that you can binge in the same way you can other shows, because it's about sexual assault and trauma, but it's just, the writing is so sharp and funny and sad, and it's just incredible. And I also started watching Lovecraft Country.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
And I'm
just
kind of hooked on
started that as well.
too.
And talk about blending genres. That is,
Yeah,
there's so much.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
hooked on that, and I'm curious to see where it's going to go. I'm excited about your David Bowie love though, because
Oh, you've opened a door, man.
Yeah, you
Aaron's like, oh shit, what's happening?
real quick, we gotta go.
because of course that was such important pop culture for writing that book and thinking about my
Yes.
character Brian's, pop culture that was important for him and just
Yeah.
transformative for him. But I listened to I was a Bowie fan, but I wasn't in the same way that my character was. But then of course I listened to so much Bowie when I was working on it. And so I don't know, I feel like Bowie is someone I keep going back to now too, and just listening to his music right now, sort of
Yeah.
helping me through quarantine.
Yeah, and I think with me, it's just he is very much blending genres, just all over the place. The way he played
Yeah.
with way he played with gender, the way he played with just sort of everything was really inspiring, I think.
He was just so fabulous,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, Aaron, are you seeing my restraint right now? Because
I was
want you
thinking
to
that he's
remark.
trying to get you to ugly cry, because that's
I
where
know,
we're
I'm
headed. Because she texts me while she's reading that book, and I know for a fact
Yeah, it was just,
there was a lot of crying.
It was
thank you.
bad, but it was good. I apparently needed that, and that was exactly what I got. No, it was wonderful. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That's it, Carter. Those were our questions. But
All right. Well,
this
great
was
talking
so
with
great,
you.
and I am now going to keep you on the line and talk to you for an hour about doing that. Is that cool?
About Bowie, yeah.
You're gonna come back in the morning, and she's still gonna be talking about Bowie.
Right. My Zoom will still be going.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much for joining us. This was wonderful to get to talk to you a little bit.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to meet both of you. And I've been listening to your show now, so I'm really excited to
that's so
keep
nice.
going
Thank
with
you.
that. And
Yes.
I love looking at all the book recommendations.
Oh, Aaron.
You were right to get him on Zoom.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It was great. I really enjoyed that interview.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I love that he kind of gave us a little bit of shit for, not liking Moby Dick. I respect that.
I do.
I am not, however, going to read the book. What are you going to do, Aaron?
Not read it again.
Nope,
No.
not gonna
And
do it.
I fully appreciate.
Yes.
That's what I love about books, though.
Right.
There is that they speak to different people at different times.
They sure do.
And I love that Moby Dick speaks to him.
Yeah.
That's
It's
terrific.
not going to speak to me, and that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay.
I also love that he talked about the fans that have survived the AIDS
Yes.
epidemic reaching out and saying what an amazing job he did of capturing that in his book.
Yeah.
What a huge compliment, testament to his writing, to his research, and to his commitment to a topic that could be very difficult to traverse. And he just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. I love that also he pretty much stalked Lydia Yuknovich into being his friend. I really liked that technique because that's kind of what we're doing with every author call.
Yeah.
We are forcing people to be our friends.
Yes.
So Carter, whether you know it or not, you're our best friend.
You're
now.
our best friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because you asked Amy about her David Bowie obsession.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know what was going through my mind. What was going through your mind at that point, Aaron?
Well, a couple things. One, we had sort of talked about it beforehand and you were like, I'm going to rein it in. So then when he said it, I was like, oh, all bets are off. Like she's going to just go for it. But then you kind of did the Amy thing where you just sort of downplayed it.
I did, and I hate that I did that
I
because
know.
he gave me an opening.
Yeah.
We could have had a nice little talk about it, and instead I was like, I gotta say one sentence and then I gotta shut up because he's not gonna like if I talk more about this.
And obviously he has an affinity for David Bowie as
Yeah.
well, which is great.
Asked.
Yes.
What is wrong with my head?
It's all of us. What can you do? But I also don't think that this is the last time that you'll have the opportunity to speak to Carter Sickels.
No, because
about
as
it.
we said, we are stalking these people into being our friends. So I'm gonna initiate a lot of contact with Carter.
You should. Yeah. I think that's
I think
the
this
smart
is now
thing
a
to do.
warning, and also this may be used in a court situation later.
Oh, Okay.
So
All
that's
right.
difficult.
Wow. You went, that was like 0 to 60. Like we're already, but that's fair. That's fair. I've said that quite a few times. If that happens, I will back you up. I will back you up 100%.
Oh no, he's gonna listen to this and be like, "Why did I do that?
What is wrong with them?
What is wrong with them?"
I'm gonna explain something real quick.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is that you have brought out this level of fandom in Amy. It means you did something right. Because
That's
if she
right.
can't control the love of this book and or David Bowie.
Right.
And they're tied together now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love you.
yeah,
And
I think you're a good fan to have. I don't know why anyone wouldn't want it.
Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
You're my ride or die.
You know it. Through restraining orders and cease and desists.
And we'll document all of it, don't you worry. And
betcha.
we'll be back next Wednesday with our regular weekly themed episodes. And in the meantime, though, you can head to our website, broadsandbooks.com, and check out all of these bonus episodes.
You can find us in a lot of places. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We got a website. Guess what? We have a YouTube channel.
God,
you want to get this podcast in a video form? Do it.
Yeah.
We made that for you.
Happy reading.